Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Sorry it's been a little while. The last video took us way too long to edit, but we're back. Thanks for sticking with us and waiting around. We're kind of flying by the seat of our pants here and winging this whole thing, but we're back to normal episodes now, and we've got a good one for you. I'm excited about it. It is a Southern classic, the fried green tomato. This is a green, This is a green tomato. It's not like an heirloom tomato, which is bred to be green. This would be a red tomato if we let it continue to ripen, but they pull it when it's green still, and it's kind of hard, and that makes it more acidic, a little bit more sour, not as sweet, and more robust, so it'll hold up when we fry it. This is a Southern classic, and you don't really see it that much anymore, which is kind of a shame. It's kind of an old school dish. Fried green tomatoes, you know, it's delicious. What makes it so delicious is really the balance of acid and fat. And the acid comes from our green tomato here, and the fat comes from the deep frying process we're gonna do. Acid and fat is a super important combination in cooking, and you'll see it all the time, maybe you didn't realize it. Like vinaigrette, right, is acid and fat. Hollandaise, you've got egg yolk and lemon juice. Berries and cream, acid, the berries, and cream is the fat. You know they taste good, and the reason they taste good is because there's a balance of acidity and fattiness. We're gonna show you a really basic version of this, just the fried green tomatoes and some remoulade sauce on the side. But you know, be creative with this. Anything that would go with tomato will go with fried green tomatoes. You compare anything with this that's like acidic or fatty. So get creative. Some burrata cheese maybe on there, some balsamic reductions, basil. Be creative. Contact your inner chef. It's time to make some sauce. We're gonna make some remoulade sauce. Remoulade sauce is like a classic Southern. You see it in New Orleans quite a bit. It's basically a mayonnaise and hot sauce. Got some mayonnaise. Got a little splash of milk just to kind of thin it out a little bit. Dill pickle relish. Dill pickle relish, you know, it's just chopped up dill pickles. If you don't have dill pickle relish, chop up some dill pickles. Gonna put those in. And hot sauce, favorite hot sauce, doesn't really matter what it is. I got this Louisiana hot sauce here. A couple teaspoons, a few glugs. Yeah, I think that's probably enough. This stuff isn't really all that hot. The complicated chef technique of stirring. Any mayonnaise-based sauce looks terrible for the first few seconds of stirring, and then it starts to look a little more appetizing. I think I'm gonna add a little more hot sauce. And that's remoulade sauce. And that is the show. Good night, everybody. We're gonna bread and fry these tomatoes. And one of the biggest problems people have when they bread and fry stuff is that the breading comes off of the thing they're trying to fry and it floats around in the oil. So to prevent that, we're gonna take some of the moisture, the excess moisture out of this tomato. And to do that, we're gonna use salt. I'm gonna slice up this tomato like half-inch slices, pretty beefy slices. We're not gonna use the top, a half-inch slice. Try to make these as even as you can. Use a real sharp knife. A serrated knife works really good for this too, like a bread knife. If you don't have a really sharp Japanese knife like this, just a serrated knife makes quick work of tomatoes. All right, you got your tomato slices. Those are gonna go on this sheet pan, which I've got lined with some paper towel, and then a grate on top so the moisture can drain through the grate and get soaked up by the towel. So here's my tomato slices. They're gonna go on the grate, and we're gonna give them a nice dusting of kosher salt. And that salt is gonna draw the moisture out of the tomatoes. Let's flip them over and do the other side. A little salt on both sides to draw out the moisture. Notice how I'm sprinkling the salt from up high. I don't do that for dramatic effect. It's if I sprinkle the salt real close like this, it ends up in one spot, and it's kind of, you get uneven seasoning. But if I do it up high, it spreads out in the air, and you get a much more even spread of the salt. So that's why you see chefs always sprinkling from way up here. So we're gonna let those sit there with the salt, 15 minutes, and you'll see quite a bit of that moisture is gonna kind of drain onto the paper towels there. Hey! What? So it's been about 15 minutes, and the moisture has been drawn out of the tomatoes. Some of it's dripped down through the grate, some of it's pooling up on top here, and we're just gonna kind of blot that extra moisture off with a paper towel. So I'm just gonna come in here and gently blot off that extra water that we pulled out. You can see how wet the paper towel is. Other side as well. Getting these dry is a big part of helping your coating to stick to the outside. If you don't do this, this is the #1 reason that your coating is going to separate from the tomato. A little too much steam generated by the liquid inside forcing off the coating. So we've got them dried pretty good, pretty dry, and we're going to do the classic 3-step breading system. Flour, egg, and breadcrumbs. So I've got some all-purpose flour here. It's just flour. And I've got a couple of eggs here beaten. A little splash of water. If they're a bit thick, I just put a little splash of water in there, but 2 eggs. And we've got a breadcrumb mixture. This is half breadcrumbs and half cornmeal. But you could certainly use all breadcrumbs or all cornmeal. This is just the mix we went with. I have a little salt and pepper in there and a little pinch of cayenne as well. And that's pretty much it. So yeah, here we go. Whenever I bread something, I like to have a dry hand and a wet hand, because if you kind of touch everything with everything, you end up with these, you end up breading your fingers. You get, you know, like giant clumps of breading all over your fingers. So I forget all the time too, so I might mess it up. But so I'm gonna throw the tomato slice in the flour first. Just kind of get some light coating on here on both sides. Tap. You want to get all that excess flour off. If there's too much flour, another reason that your coating will come off. So get all the excess flour off. Then it goes into our egg. My left hand is the wet, so my left finger is gonna go ahead, poke that down. Plop that right into the breadcrumbs. Now my dry hand, sprinkle some crumbs over the top. Press them in so they really stick and cling at the sides. They're not going to stick to the sides quite as well. That's fine. Dust off the excess, and there you have a nicely breaded green tomato. That goes on the rack, and that's going to chill there for 10 minutes or so. Ideally, what we want here is the moisture to kind of hydrate the starches and the crumbs on the outside. If I threw this right in the hot oil right now, it would come off. So by letting it sit here 10-15 minutes, you can do this ahead of time. You can even freeze these if you want, but I'd recommend doing it fresh. But yeah, let it sit there at least 15 minutes or so the starches can hydrate and this can bond. The coating can stick to your tomato. So I'm gonna keep doing that, and we'll show you the rest of them. It's time to fry up our tomatoes. I've got some oil here in a cast iron skillet. Cast iron helps retain the heat. I've got it about 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Actually going a little above 350, 370 something. So when I put the tomatoes in, the tomatoes will lower the temperature of the oil to the target temperature of 350. So yeah, the oil is already hot. I've used a thermometer to check it, and now we go in with the tomatoes. Lay the tomato away from yourself so it doesn't splash. There you go. I'm gonna do a few at a time. Don't overcrowd the pan. I think 4 is the most we could probably do. I think I might even just do 3 here. You want that aggressive sizzling. If the oil's not hot enough, it's gonna soak into your breading and you're gonna end up with a greasy, soggy, oily product. So it's important the oil temperature is correct. The moment they come out, that's when you want to season them. So I got a little bit of salt, because there's still the oil on the outside. That's the seasoning will stick. If you wait too long, the salt's not going to stick to the outside. Let's do our second batch. A few more. This goes pretty quick. This is a quick recipe, really. Cooking time is really only about 3 or 4 minutes. It goes into the bath. It's time to put the dish together. We've got our tomatoes. We've got our sauce, a little bit of basil for garnish. I'm gonna keep this super simple, but like I said earlier, you can add a lot of ingredients to this dish and make it, make it really fancy and cool and interesting. But I'm just showing you the basics here, just for demonstration purposes. We're gonna keep this simple, just tomatoes and sauce. So it's up to you, but I'm gonna start with the sauce on the bottom so they kind of keep their crispiness, right? So I'm gonna add a little scallop here. Spread that across. We're gonna add our tomatoes. A little fresh basil. Classic pairing for tomatoes is basil, right? There it is. Fried green tomatoes. All right, I'm going in for a taste. Here we go, first taste test. It's that fat and the acid in balance, right? And it just makes me want to take another bite, because anything that's in balance makes you want to just keep eating it. And I'm gonna keep doing that right now. I'm gonna go in for another bite. Got a little bit of heat from the hot sauce, but not much. It's not really a spicy dish at all. You get the acidity from the tomato. It's not cooked till it's mushy. It's still a little bit fresh. It's almost like it's got a little crunch left to it still. And you have this really crispy coating on the outside. This is a classic for a reason. This is really good. This is easy. This is a good way to learn how to fry stuff and not have the coating fall off. Try it at home. I think you'll like it. This is a cheap, easy dish, and it's right at this time of year, it's starting to heat up. Tomatoes are coming into season in lots of parts of the country, and this is a perfect thing to make at home. Fried green tomatoes. Try it.